The president-elect has got to pick a cabinet, and it looks like his friend Rudy Giuliani is in the lead role for the Secretary of State. You know, I endorsed him some years ago, got a lot of heat for doing it when he was running for president. But he cleaned up New York. He was mayor of New York, and you need somebody with that kind of experience. The State Department is a big, sprawling empire. And it has resisted presidents. John F. Kennedy said the State Department wouldn't listen to him. Harry Truman said Eisenhower's going to be surprised because they don't listen to him. When Reagan wanted to do that, and Mr. Gorbachev tear down that wall speech, the State Department did everything they could to took that line out of his speech. They look like they're scared of their shadow, and they have resisted moving the American embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv, wherever it is, up to Jerusalem, where it ought to be. So they've been so scared of the Arabs. So I think that Giuliani is going to have his hands full with the State Department, but hey, more power to him.
And he's had some experience, so
well,
let's hope that
he
pays
cleaned up
off
New York,
yes.
And he did a great job. He's a very competent executive, and that's what you need. You need somebody who's had a big organization in a big city, big state, to take on one of those big agencies. And they talk about, for example, Kelly Ayotte. I mean, she's undoubtedly a nice lady, but she's just a senator. And they wanted to talk about putting her in charge of the Defense Department, which is one of the most enormous corporations in the entire world. I mean, you just don't do that. You need somebody with executive experience. All right.
Well, Trump's also focusing on who would be in charge of his energy policy, where he wants to change President Obama's policies on issues like coal mining and global warming. Gary Lane has that story for us.
As outgoing President Barack Obama made his final overseas trip as president, starting in Greece, incoming President Donald Trump pondered his potential cabinet picks. Just before leaving on his trip, President Obama held a press conference where he said that Trump was committed to NATO, and he was asked about his impressions of the president-elect.
I don't think he is ideological. I think ultimately he's pragmatic in that way, and that can serve him well.
Trump's latest potential cabinet picks may demonstrate a pragmatic business approach to move the country forward. On the campaign trail, Trump pledged to approve the Keystone Pipeline and said he'd take steps to make the U.S. energy independent. Some of those being considered to head up the Department of Energy would help him accomplish that. Among them, North Dakota Congressman Kevin Cramer. North Dakota has become one of the nation's top oil-producing states. Oklahoma oil tycoon Harold Hamm. The billionaire's Continental Resources Company is involved in shale oil fracking. Also considered for head of the Department of Energy, or Interior, is venture capitalist Robert Grady. Grady previously worked in the Bush administration, but the big surprise may be Trump's potential pick for Secretary of State, America's top diplomat. For now, it appears to be Trump supporter and friend Rudy Giuliani, a former federal prosecutor. Many people thought Giuliani would be appointed U.S. Attorney General or possibly head of Homeland Security. But Trump reportedly told the former New York City mayor he can have any cabinet position he wants. And Trump may appoint gay Republican Richard Grenell to be ambassador to the United Nations. Grenell is a foreign policy expert and the longest-serving U.S. spokesman at the UN. Still to come, who the president-elect will choose for the important posts of Secretary of Defense, Intelligence, Homeland Security, and Treasury. And once his cabinet is firmed up, Trump will have another important personnel decision to make. Who will replace the late Antonin Scalia on the U.S. Supreme Court? Trump has vowed to appoint pro-life justices and judges, those who may potentially overturn Roe v. Wade.
If it ever were overturned, it would go back to the states. So it would go back to the states.
Some women won't be able to get an abortion.
No, it'll go back to the states.
By state? No, some...
Yeah. Well, they'll perhaps have to go to another state.
Gary Lane, CBN News.
Well, our CBN News political correspondent David Brody is with us now from the White House. And Dave, how do you think the Senate Democrats will react, for example, to Giuliani? He should breeze through, wouldn't you think, or no?
Well, I think they're going to give him a tough time, but ultimately he's going to get approved if and when he becomes Secretary of State, or at least nominated for Secretary of State. But they'll give him a hard time. Look, I mean, you know, Pat, Chuck Schumer and a bunch of those New York Democrats are going to give Giuliani a run for his money when he sits down for any sort of confirmation hearing. But this would be a coup de grace, not just for the Trump administration if Giuliani were Secretary of State, but for Giuliani himself. Let's remember, before John Kerry, let me think. Oh, that's right, Hillary Clinton with Secretary of State, and Rudy Giuliani and Hillary Clinton, well, there's no love lost between the two of them. So to think about this, for Giuliani to, in essence, replace Secretary Clinton from 2 Secretary of States ago, if you will, would be such a feather in the cap personally for Rudy Giuliani. But beyond that, there's a lot of work to be done if he indeed was going to be in that crucial position, Pat.
Well, how about the energy nominees? You know, Harold Hamm, Continental Resources, he's an interesting guy. He's made a lot of money in fracking. I think he's lost some money recently, had a big, highly publicized divorce where his wife took him for a lot of money. What do you think?
Well, the word here on the D.C. streets, or the district, if you will, is Harold Hamm is the leading candidate to run the Energy Department. And indeed, you're right, shale oil, fracking, this is what he's all about, exactly the opposite of what President Obama had any desire to do. And I think one of the first things you'll see, whether it be Harold Hamm, of course, it'll be all ultimately decided by Donald Trump, and that is to get rid of that clean power plan that President Obama put in place that would, in essence, reduce carbon emissions from power plants all across the country. That's now being litigated in court, but Donald Trump has no desire to see that go forward, and so he looks to repeal that. As he continues to look at offshore drilling. We're going to have a whole different sort of energy policy here at the White House come January 20th, Pat.
What is your sense of Trump's political philosophy about how to get things done in Washington?
Well, look, this guy he's not a traditional Republican, newsflash. He's not, obviously, a Democrat. He's a Trumpublican, is what I like to call him. In other words, he's a guy that's going to put America first. And it's no surprise. He talked about this on the campaign trail. He'll put America first. And what does that mean exactly? Well, it means I'll take a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and I'm going to be pragmatic. And I think that's the #1 goal, if you will, for Trump, is to be pragmatic, be a negotiator, be a deal maker, figure all of this out. Now, remember, that comes with a word of caution here, Pat. All of these conservative groups, including conservative Christian groups, need to be ready and understand that Trump's going to cut a deal. And in the past, cutting a deal meant sacrificing your principles potentially here in Washington. We'll see how Trump navigates that, because I think that will be a lot of pushback that he's going to get from traditional Republican sources. They have to remember, this is not GOP orthodoxy here come January 20th. If you are a Republican, if you're a conservative, and you voted for Donald Trump, you have to understand that you're not going to get the traditional Republican playbook. Are you okay with that? I think that's a separate Dr. Phil psychological discussion that every one of us is going to have, Pat.
David, he got a call from Putin, and they seem to be buddies. You know, Putin is KGB to the core, and I know Trump is a great deal maker, but he's up against the best. Do you think he's going to get taken in that engagement?
Well, Trump's track record throughout his business dealings is he just doesn't get taken to the tune of billions of dollars. So it seems like he won't get taken. Having said that, Putin's a tough cookie, if you will, but so is Trump. And, you know, one of the things we saw during the campaign is that Trump was giving Putin all of this praise, and the media went apoplectic, if you will, or apocalyptic, if you will, about the fact that he would praise Putin. Look, Trump knows, I've been covering this guy for 7 years now, Trump knows that it's all about leverage. It's all about the art of the deal. You butter up your opponent, you get him smiling, get him comfortable, and then you go in for what you need.
Okay. Well, one last one. He put Reince Priebus in, who's certainly a traditional Republican, has been a brilliant leader of the RNC. Now he's got Bannon in there, who, in some of the statements that he's made in Breitbart, have been extremely inflammatory. How are the two of them working out so far?
Well, this is going to be interesting, Pat, to say the least. Maybe interesting isn't all that great of a word. Maybe something bigger than that. Look, this is fire and ice. I mean, this is, to use a food analogy, and believe me, Pat, I love food. Vanilla ice cream, Reince Priebus, standard. Rocky Road, Steve Bannon. Totally two different flavors. You choose the flavor, and Trump is going to be able to choose that flavor depending on what the issue is. For example, trade. Steve Bannon, much more in line with Donald Trump's views on trade than Reince Priebus. So he'll mix and match and pick, deciding what he wants to do specifically with each one of those. It's going to be very interesting. You know, Reince Priebus, remember, he's the guy that has the Washington connections. So does Mike Pence, obviously, and that's what he needs Reince Priebus for. And Steve Bannon is the guy if you will, to kind of just get him thinking a little bit outside the box. And Donald Trump likes that. He likes to have advisors that are going to compete with one another. It'll make for great palace intrigue, though, I'll tell you that.
Okay, well, stay with it. You couldn't be at a better time and a better place in history. You'll have a lot of fun.
Thanks, Pat.
Well, Wall Street has been very happy to see Donald Trump in the White House, but will the Trump rally continue in stocks? Jenna Browder has that story.
Pat, the Dow Jones Industrials have hit record highs during this post-election rally. The Dow went up in the first 4 days since Trump won. And the Standard & Poor's 500 has also come close to a record, but technology stocks haven't done quite as well. Some analysts are looking for the market to take a rest and possibly fall back a little bit. But stocks usually do pretty well during the holiday season, and many experts think they should stay strong through the end of the year. People ages 40 to 75 should get screened for high cholesterol, and many of them should consider using statin drugs to prevent a possible heart attack or stroke. That's the recommendation from a government-backed task force. Some experts believe statins can reduce the risk of heart attacks and cardiovascular disease, but others warn that statins can only help a tiny percentage of people. One doctor telling Reuters Health that statins can cause side effects like memory loss or brain fog, diabetes, muscle aches, and other problems. Pat?
Thank you so much for that. And ladies and gentlemen, you know my feeling about statins. They are murder. I just hate them. They leave you with muscle aches. And now they're putting a warning label on that you can be a little depressed and also lose cognitive ability because of statins. So, you know, your brain needs cholesterol. Your body needs it. That the brain works off cholesterol.
Yeah, it all works together. But our guest earlier this week really was wonderful.
Well, it all works together to make Pfizer and these other drug companies rich. I mean, they have made
our bodies.
They've made a fortune out of this statin stuff. And I tell you, we've had a wonderful lady he wrote a book called Vitamin Muggers, talking about how statins take the CoQ10 out of your body and actually imperil your heart instead of helping it. So anyhow, I think there are natural ways to lower cholesterol without going that route, but doctors are passing those things out like they're candy.